Today on In the Woodyard, can your firewood breathe? It needs to. Let's talk about it. Here we go. So a common question that comes up on, I shouldn't say question, it's a comment and a question, I get kind of both, is there's a lot of guys that they just don't think you need to stack firewood. And there are certain circumstances where you don't need to, but in my opinion, you need to. And I would say probably for 95% of you, you need to stack your firewood. If you want to have quality wood and you want it to dry and you want it to stay dry. And if you want to be able to burn it and not have, smoldering wet gobs of nothing on the bottom of your stove because it's not burning. So in my opinion, get it off the ground. So we're going to talk about the firewood and how it needs to breathe and what you need to do, to make it so they can breathe. And I talked a little bit about this the other day. We talked about where to stack your wood, and a big open area obviously is the best. So if you want to watch that video, you can go back, I don't know, 3 or 4 videos ago, 5 videos ago. There was a bunch of them that I did that are about stacking. But this one I'm talking about how your wood breathes and what you can do to help it breathe. So first thing, obviously, get it off the ground. Get it stacked. Now, if your wood is in a big, huge pile on the ground, in the dirt, the bottom stuff is not going to dry. I mean, it might dry in, 10 years. So I get comments quite often from guys that are saying stuff like, well, I don't know why you waste all your time stacking that wood there. It seems like a waste of time. Well, first response that I have to that is I sell wood. And when I sell the wood, I need to deliver the proper quantity of wood as far as how much they're going to get, and all my wood being stacked, I know how much wood is here. So when I go to load the wood, for instance, if someone was to buy a full cord of cherry for me, that's what this is, cherry right here. I have 3 rows that start down on this end. As you can see, there's 1, 2, 3 rows, and they're on pallets. It's 4 feet high. There's an end right here. It goes all the way across to right here. Oh, there's another pallet at the 8-foot mark right here. So everything from here over is a full cord. And then there's another full cord that goes right through this area right here. Now, if someone was to buy from me a face cord or 1/3 of a cord, which happens a lot, and that's what we call it around here. I don't know, some of you guys call it a rick. Some of you guys don't know that you can separate a full cord. You can sell a 1/2 a cord if you want, or you can sell a face cord, or you can sell a 1/3 of a cord, or you can sell a 1/2 of a 1/3 if you want. You can do whatever you want, unless your area has rules where you can't do that. You can sell whatever you want. As long as you're happy, your customer's happy, everybody's happy. So it's off the ground here. So when I go to deliver this wood, I load it into my truck or to my trailer. I just throw the whole thing in. Done. It's pre-measured. I know what I've got. And some people say, well, can't you just scoop it up with, like a bucket or, a gravel bucket that's got slots in it so stuff falls through, whatever. I mean, yeah, you could do some of that stuff, but is it going to be accurate? And I see guys that scoop up wood in buckets to deliver it from like in a shed or off the ground. And it's about 50% dirt and bark and debris. My wood is clean because I already cleaned it by stacking it. So when I throw it in, it's clean. There's no dirt, there's no debris. And I do get customers that ask quite often, is your wood stored off the ground? Is it stacked? And the number one thing that I hear, I shouldn't say all the time, I hear it quite often, do you load it with a skid steer or a bucket? And the reason they're asking is they've bought wood in the past that was loaded with a skid steer or a bucket from off the ground. And people have told me, it was horrible. There was chunks of sod, rocks, dirt, bark, branches, just all kinds of garbage with it, that when it got delivered, it was a mess. So having it off the ground, you're gonna have a better quality product. So there, I'm done with that rant now. So now we'll talk a little bit about the breathing part, which is the whole original part of this thing that I started here. So as you can see, these rows that I have here are open in between, and they're big enough that I can walk between them, as you can see here. I'm just going to show you how much space I have. Sometimes I got to turn sideways a little bit, but that's just so that I can reach in for when we're stacking. And the main reason I do that, well, not main reason, it is a reason, is that it can breathe. Wind can flow through here all the time. And the ends being like they are, wind can flow through here. Now I do 3 rows, and that's about as much as I like to do as far as width. And the reason is that I want it to be able to breathe side to side also. So if I was to make just a solid mass and not have this separated like I do with these rows here, it would be tighter and it wouldn't breathe as good in the middle. Obviously you'd have a big block of wood, so to have some space in there is important. So I think that's a big part of it, is to not go too wide with your rows. You probably could go 4 or 5 rows if you're in a windy area, a sunny area, and you've got, you know, a lot of the wood that's off the ground. If you're not going super massive with it, it's not going to breathe as good. It just isn't. And the other reason I do this is I want to turn my wood over every year, and I do. Everything I have I sell every year, and so I don't want to sit on it for 2, 3, 4 years waiting for it to dry. So another thing that's real important, I think, like I said before, is to keep it off the ground. So as you can see down here, I've got pallets underneath here, so it is actually off the ground that much, and the air can flow through all the way through, all the way around, off the ground, and it can breathe. So that's important. The next thing we're going to talk about is covering your wood. So here you can see this is a cord I have right here. Actually, it's more than a cord. It's just 4 rows wide. This is ash that I caught last spring. So this wood is just over, it's about 1 year and 3, 4 months old now. And I do have it covered. But the key to covering your wood, again, it's got to be able to breathe. I do not have the sides covered. It is actually open on the sides. The front, and then down the sides here, you can see that it actually, the covering only goes to the top edge so that the water can run off and not down into the wood, and the air can still flow through it. Now I didn't cover this wood until it had been sitting out here for 6, 7 months, something like that, because I cut it in the spring and I covered it in the fall. And the big reason that I cover it in the fall is because this is Wisconsin that I'm in here, and we have this little thing that lasts for about 6 months every year called winter. And when we get winter, we have snow. When we have snow, the snow piles up, and then we have days that it will thaw, and then it will, the snow that as it thaws will go down in between the wood, and when it gets down inside of there, because there's no sun hitting it and it's cold inside of there, it'll freeze. And then your big massive pile of wood like this turns into a wood sickle. And so by having the top covered after it has been out in the sun and wind for 6, 7 months, something like that, 8 months in a lot of cases, sometimes almost a year before I cover it, it's breathing the whole time. It's getting air, it's getting sun, and the moisture can evaporate from the wood, and it dries really well that way. So again, the reason I cover it is to keep the snow off, so that when I go to sell it, I don't have a big mass of ice frozen with it. And I do have it so that it's slightly tapered side to side. And when I first put it on, I always check it after the first couple rains to make sure there's no big puddles where water's going to collect in there, because what will happen is if you get a dip in the middle with a lot of water in there, and what a lot of times happens is mice will chew from the bottom, will chew a hole in it, and then basically you've got a funnel that all the water runs right down into your pile of wood. So that's a real good reason to make sure that you don't have big pools of water up there. So I'm going to go over to the next pile right over this way. This is wood that I just cut. This was very end of winter I got this into the spring, and this is a load of oak that I got right here, and you can see that there's rows going through here all the way, and they're separated, and so there's some space there. Now one of the things that I'm going to do in a little while here is I'm actually going to do some trimming, because I'll show you over here. That wood was just stacked not too long ago. You can see there's no grass around it, and I've been mowing around it. But this wood here has been here since the spring. And I did spray it earlier this year with some Roundup to kill as much as I could. But there are areas where I've got grass growing now. Like here, I killed it really good so that you don't have the grass up against it. Here, it's pretty much dead. Some still living here a little bit. Here it's still growing a little bit, so I'm going to trim this out. I'm going to trim this out in here. I'm going to go in here and I'm going to trim this stuff out so I get more airflow and kind of knock this stuff down right in here. Here's another one that's got a little bit of grass growing around it. Just going to walk over the other side here. So I want the wind to go as much as possible in and under there. You can see I sprayed it, some dead stuff there. Here there's some live stuff up against it. And we'll go to another spot. So here's an example of stuff that grew up all around my pile here. And this is an area where it's way in the back of my wood yard. And all this stuff grew up. And I'm just going to show you how high it is. I'll kind of see if I can get back here. But if you can see down there, I mean, it's up to my waist here high. So that wood there is not getting any airflow down in here because from the ground all the way up to there, it's being blocked. So I'm going to get this all trimmed out of here today. And of course, as you know, weeds grow, and they grow just like weeds. That's a funny one. So now here's an example of where I sprayed a little bit, I think, early in the year, but there's a bunch of weeds and stuff growing up around the wood here, so it's not breathing as good as it could. I want to get more airflow. So I'm going to take my trimmer and I'm going to trim all this stuff off. Here it got tall before I sprayed it, but then it's just dead. So I'm still want to knock this down and get it as low as possible and get it so that it can breathe. Over here there was some stuff that grew up around here, but I've been selling this wood, so I've just kind of been eating into it. But if I come down over here, you can see there's a bunch of stuff growing here where I got these pallets. And so I want to kind of open that up so it can get more air and it can breathe better. So that's what I'm going to do today. So here's the only pile that I have left in my whole wood yard that needs stacking. Now, this has been sitting here now for a few months since I cut it and split it, and I haven't gotten to it yet. I don't plan on selling this wood this winter. I mean, there's a chance I will towards the end of winter, so this wood would then end up being 7, 8 months, 9 months by the time I sell it. And there's a chance I could sell it. I'll do some tests on it and everything. But there are pallets underneath here. I'll walk around to the other side. And so the wood is actually mostly off the ground. So because I had wood stacked here before, but you can see there's pallets right here, and that they go all the way through over there. But on this front side, up around over here, there are chunks that are actually on the ground right here. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to dig into this pile, and I'm going to get down to the bottom there, and I know I'm going to find some wood that's wet, maybe even moldy. So I'm going to show you that basically because it's on the ground, it's not drying. And we'll see. So here we go. I'm going to dig some holes and we'll get down in there and take a look. Okay, so I dug just, I don't know, a little bit of a hole in there, and I only went in like 3-4 feet at the most. And that wood is only, it might be 2 to 3 feet from the top, but it's down on the bottom, and it's laying on a whole bunch of bark and chips and stuff like that from splitting, so it's not even in direct contact with the ground. And we haven't had rain now in, I don't know, a couple weeks, so it's pretty dry. But when I got in there just that little bit, we got this stuff right here. This is mold growing on here. It's kind of hard to see, but this is like a powdery mold that's starting to grow on there. Here's a bunch of mold growing in there, fungus starting to grow. And this piece right here's got a bunch of mold growing on it. This one here's got a bunch of mold growing on it. And this one here is just soaking wet yet. Here's when it's got mold starting in here. You can see that white stuff starting on there. And this one is just soaking wet. It's down on the bottom there. And so yeah, so where it's making contact on the ground, this is just all wet, because especially red oak wicks moisture from the ground. So, you know, this stuff isn't nearly as bad as some that I've seen, but this is just right on the edge. I haven't even got into the middle yet, and I don't plan on digging in that far, just for showing you guys. But I have some footage I'm going to drop in here, I think right after this, that will show you stuff that I've dug up from some of the other piles and how wet and moldy it can be only after a few months of not getting any air. So I just thought I would show you, this is the stuff that's on the ground. It's actually physically touching the ground here. So I'm going to pull some of these off and just show you. See how underneath, see how the mud sticks to that? And this one has got the back of it. This is just, I mean, it's very heavy. You can just tell it's been in the water, I mean, on the ground. The pieces that are right in the very bottom, there's some mold growing right there. Look at this one here, how wet this one is. Oh, that's just, I think it's twice as heavy as when I cut it. That just feels like lead. So they're just sucking up moisture. So again, it's just the bottom layer. Anything that touches the ground, like this one here is, well, that's not cherry. This is a piece of, what the heck is this? I'm going to say this is Locust, that's what that is, locust, yep. But here, the end of it was in the ground over there, but the whole thing it's been soaking up water the whole time. And then if you look down here, this one soaking wet again. So I'm just kind of digging through this here just to show you. Here's one that's not on the ground, but see, there's a little bit of mold on the bark right in here, which normally cherry doesn't grow too much mold. But this is not drying down there. Here's a piece of box elder, and that does have some mold. You can see the white on there, because box elder molds real easily. And here you can see, look right down here, see the mold on there. That's the green kind of stuff, but that is, dig down to it here, you can see it. That is on the ground. Like, the split side is face down, so it's gonna suck up a lot of moisture. Yeah, it's just heavy as can be and dirty and nasty. Now the good thing about getting it off the ground, obviously, is the mold will die off, and with rain, when you put it onto the pile, all this dirt will wash off of it. So a lot of these pieces that are dirty like this, I try to put up on the top of the pile, and I face them up so that the rain can hit it and all that dirt will wash off of it. Now, especially if you don't clean your ground off, and you've got just lots of sawdust from years after years after years, and you're in a wet, low area, that'll just suck moisture up. And if you got wood pile or laying on top of that and it sinks down into it a little bit, it's no different than mulching around your trees and your shrubs in your yard or flowers, whatever. It holds moisture. It just does. So you got to get your wood off the ground. That's just my opinion. I know some people are gonna argue about that, but I really don't care. I'm selling wood. I want a quality product when I deliver it. I don't want a bunch of moldy wood with fungus growing on it and a whole bunch of mushrooms growing on it. People notice that stuff. You don't want to have a crappy product. You want a good product. Now, if you're doing it just for yourself and you don't care, especially if you're burning in like a boiler, outdoor wood boiler, it probably doesn't matter. And the fungus will still, the fungus or mold or whatever it is, it'll still burn. Especially if you get it off the ground eventually where it can dry out a little bit better. But I just know that this wood is not drying down there at all because it's actually got water on it. It's wet to the touch and it's heavy. So get it off the ground and get your wood so that it can breathe. So we're gonna go do some whack into some weeds now so that we can get it kind of opened up and that it can breathe better. So, and the one other thing I didn't mention when I was talking about the tarps on the top, once you get your wood totally dry, like 100% dry, like when it's down to in the teens or even single digits of drying, then you probably can cover all the way down and cover the sides and everything. Because I know some people have these wood racks where they get the total coverings that go all the way around the whole thing, the top, all four sides, right down to the ground, and it's off the ground because it's in a rack. Then you're probably okay because it's ready to burn as it is. So you don't really need, to have it, have airflow then. But if you're in the drying process, it's got to breathe. You got to get sun hitting it, you got to get wind hitting it, and it's got to get dry. So now we're going to do some whacking of some weeds. It is complete. I trimmed like a maniac for about a half an hour there. I got a lot of big tall weeds whacked, and I think the wood can breathe again. It's like taking a mask off. It's like the wood can breathe again. I think you know what I mean. Most important part of trimming, it's right here. For those of you that haven't trimmed much, and if you're going to get a trimmer for doing anything, you got to wear these. That crap flies everywhere, and if you don't wear them, you're going to get your eye damaged. It's probably one of the most dangerous things you can do, in my opinion, with a tool, because you've got rocks and stones and pebbles and sand, clumps of stuff, and stuff flying through the air, and it comes at you, it bounces off. I've been hit in the face to where it actually hurts, and I can't even imagine what it'd be like if you got hit in the eye. So gotta wear these, and I wear those too. For those of you that want to know, it's an Echo SRM 225, so I'm guessing it's a 25cc trimmer. I don't know, I've had it for years. It works great, starts all the time. I had a different trimmer before this, and this is a really good one. It works great. So I don't remember how much it was, 180, 90, I don't know, something like that. But you can see I got the stuff all trimmed all the way through there. I cut all this tall stuff here. I went down as far as I could reach in that one, and then I reached in there. I got a bunch of stuff done. I got this trimmed out, so I went all the way along the edges here, as you can see, and I got all the tall grass knocked down. So now if you get down to ground level, you can see that the pallets now have space, and they can have airflow going through them again all the way through there. So that's it for today, folks. Thanks for watching. Hopefully you learned something, enjoyed it a little bit, whatever. Thanks for being here. I appreciate it. Make a comment. I do spray sometimes with Roundup. I did that, but I don't really like Roundup that much. I do it a little bit around stuff where it's kind of permanent, where I want to be, you know, just get it done and leave it a couple times a year. I'd rather just trim it. It's just, I don't know, just me. I'm weird. Anyway, let me know what you do. Do you trim? Do you spray? And let me know what you think. Tomorrow I'm going to be back in the wood yard. You should come along. It'll be fun. We'll have more fun working, because that's what we do. Between now and then, get outside, get cutting. Good night, Irene.